Have you ever thought about how service, like really giving back, um, can become something much bigger?
Like how it can actually build real love and harmony.
Exactly. And that's kind of what we're going to dig into today, right? We've been looking at some really interesting ideas that say this isn't just, you know, a nice side effect. It's like a core way we grow, both personally and as a community.
It's like this hidden potential in service that we often overlook.
And here's the kicker, right? The tough stuff, the challenges we bump into when we're serving with others, those can actually be the biggest opportunities to cultivate that love and harmony.
It's kind of counterintuitive, isn't it? Like you'd think smooth sailing would be the best for that.
Right. But it's like those challenges, they kind of force us to stretch and grow in ways we wouldn't otherwise.
Totally. And one of the things that really struck me in all this is this idea of love, right? Like loving one another as a kind of foundational principle.
It sounds so simple, right? Love each other.
Yeah, but then you get into the nitty-gritty of it. Maybe things get tense, personalities clash, deadlines loom.
It's easy to say it, but harder to live it.
Exactly. Especially when you're trying to get stuff done to serve effectively together. That's when it's really put to the test.
Yeah. And it makes me think of any team, really. You can have the most talented people, but if they can't get along, if there isn't that respect, that care for each other.
Forget about it. The whole thing falls apart.
And, one of the sources we looked at talked about the joy of any gathering really blossoming when love and harmony are present, especially when people are coming together for a shared purpose.
That's a beautiful way to put it.
It's like this ideal, this vision of everyone working together seamlessly.
But here's the thing. Getting there isn't always easy. It's like there's this part of us, our minds, that almost wants to create divisions, even when we're all supposed to be on the same side working towards the same thing.
It's almost like we have to constantly work against that tendency.
Exactly. It's not passive. Cultivating love and harmony takes real effort, conscious effort, all the time.
It's like a garden, Like you can't just plant the seeds and walk away.
They got to tend to it, nurture it.
Let's be real. The world's a messy place. So are we. We all come with our baggage, our own ways of seeing things, our flaws.
Absolutely. We're all works in progress, right?
And the material we've been digging into, it totally acknowledges this. It points out that friction is almost inevitable when you have different people coming together.
It's bound to happen.
It even told this story about someone who was doing service, but was like, I just want to avoid people.
Oh, I know that feeling.
Right. Like sometimes those interactions can just feel draining.
But here's what's interesting. The material suggests that those interactions, those tricky moments, those are actually a huge part of the value of serving with others.
And so it's like, don't shy away from it.
Lean into it, because it's in working through those misunderstandings, finding common ground, that we really grow in kindness, patience, and that deeper love.
It's like those tough interactions are actually good for us, in a way.
In a way, yeah. It's like they're strengthening our love muscles, making us more empathetic and understanding.
Interesting. And the sources also talked about this balance between the individual and the collaborative aspects of service.
Right. Like there are times when focusing on your own individual contribution is really important.
And then there are times when it's all about coming together, working as a team.
And both are valuable learning experiences.
And this next part is really fascinating. The material we looked at suggests that sometimes our interactions with other people in service aren't random.
Like there's something deeper going on.
Yeah, it brings up this concept of karmic connections, Like some people we naturally vibe with, others not so much.
And maybe that's because of stuff from the past, like past lives even.
Exactly. It adds this whole other layer to understanding those dynamics that can sometimes feel so puzzling.
It's like maybe we're working through stuff that goes way beyond just this current situation.
And the sources make this point, that a truly capable person in service, they should be able to work well with anyone, not just the people they naturally click with.
Right. It's about having that kind of expansive acceptance.
And that's actually a really powerful skill to cultivate, isn't it? Because it means we're not letting our personal preferences dictate who we work with or how we serve.
And what fuels that skill? It's the shared connection to the purpose of the service itself. That's what allows us to put aside our differences and work together, even when it's tough.
Right. It's that common ground that binds us.
Exactly.
And, this connection isn't just something we switch on and off when we're serving, right? The material really emphasizes bringing that spirit of love and harmony into every aspect of our involvement.
Into the spaces where service happens, and even into our everyday lives.
It talks about these core principles: love, humility, service, and reflection, as the very foundation of these communities.
It's like they're not just guidelines for specific events, but a way of life.
And that brings up this really important point about individual responsibility.
Who's going to create that love and harmony? It's on each one of us.
Yeah, we can't just sit back and wait for it to happen. It takes active participation from everyone.
It's like we're all responsible for creating the atmosphere through our individual actions and intentions.
And that means believing that everyone's contribution matters, that everyone belongs.
That's where that sense of inclusivity comes in, making sure everyone feels valued and respected.
It's crucial, right? Because ultimately, we're all serving something bigger than ourselves.
And that connects to this really insightful question that the sources pose. When things get frustrating, ask yourself, is there a problem? Or am I the problem?
Whoa, that's a good one. It really makes you stop and think.
It's like before you point fingers, check your own attitude, your own contribution to the situation.
Right, it's about taking responsibility. And it ties back to this idea that if our heart is in the right place, if we're truly connected to that higher purpose, that love will naturally extend outwards.
Because we start to see that same essence, that same spark in everyone we serve alongside.
Now, the material also gets into some really practical advice for navigating the rough patches, those times when things get difficult.
Like what to do when someone says something that rubs you the wrong way.
Yeah, those moments when you just want to react.
The advice they give is so simple, but so powerful. Listen, but don't react. Reflect, then act.
Sometimes taking that pause is all it takes.
It's like creating that space between the trigger and your response,
Yeah.
so you can choose a more thoughtful action instead of just reacting emotionally.
Because let's face it, once those words are out there, you can't take them back.
Exactly. And that same principle applies to disagreements. They use this really interesting analogy. Be wise like a serpent and harmless like a dove.
I love that. It means being strategic about when to speak up and when to hold back.
Right, like knowing when to engage and when to step back, but always acting with kindness and avoiding unnecessary conflict.
But of course, there are times when tough conversations are unavoidable.
Like when someone's behavior is causing problems or there's a conflict that needs to be addressed.
But even then, the emphasis is on doing it with respect and love.
Exactly. Being humble and kind doesn't mean avoiding difficult conversations. It's about how you approach them.
It's about focusing on the issue, not attacking the person.
And the sources highlight how powerful those small acts of kindness and empathy can be, like really listening, offering a kind word, a genuine smile.
It's so true. Those little things can make a huge difference.
They really can. And that brings us to this essential principle of inclusivity. Service should be a welcoming space for everyone.
No matter their background, their beliefs, their differences.
We're all part of something bigger, and everyone deserves to feel like they belong.
And that requires us to look at our own biases, those judgments we make based on limited perspectives.
It's about remembering that we don't know the whole story, that everyone's walking their own path.
Like walk a mile in their shoes before you jump to conclusions.
Exactly, and that applies to our fellow volunteers too. Everyone's got their own stuff going on.
We're all in this together.
And it's interesting, one of the sources pointed out that we're almost programmed to judge.
It's like a default setting in our minds.
And overcoming that takes real effort, a conscious rewiring of our thought patterns.
It's about choosing to see the good in others, to give them the benefit of the doubt.
And it's a lot lighter, Carrying around all that judgment is heavy.
It weighs you down.
And there's a beautiful idea presented. If you don't judge in the first place, there's nothing to forgive.
That's true. It's like you're operating on a whole different level.
And it helps to remember that people's actions are often shaped by their past experiences, their conditioning.
So instead of getting frustrated, try to have compassion.
Understand where they're coming from.
It makes things so much easier.
Mm.
And all of this ties into this balance between efficiency and harmony in service, right?
Because sometimes in the rush to get things done, we can lose sight of the human element.
It becomes all about checking things off the list.
But the sources emphasize that it's not just about the task. It's about the spirit in which it's done.
That spirit of harmony.
Exactly. And that means avoiding comparisons. We shouldn't measure ourselves against others or get caught up in how others are doing things.
Everyone's path is unique.
Focus on your own journey, your own connection to the purpose of the service.
And, speaking of journeys, the sources really highlight the importance of teamwork.
It's about bringing everyone along, making sure everyone feels included and valued.
That collective effort is what truly matters.
It's more precious than individual brilliance.
It all comes back to inner work, right? To practices like reflection, Meditation.
That's how we cultivate the qualities that create a harmonious atmosphere.
It's like tending to that inner garden.
Exactly. And there's this beautiful idea that as we grow spiritually, those good qualities emerge naturally.
Like cream rising to the top of milk.
We don't have to struggle or force it, they just blossom.
And, there's this teaching that when people gather together in the name of service, there's a special presence that's felt.
It's like an unseen force that unites everyone.
And that should influence how we interact with each other.
Absolutely. It's about bringing that awareness into all our interactions.
Acting with kindness, love, and respect.
And it's not just about being that way when we're actively serving, it's about carrying that spirit into our everyday lives.
Living those principles all the time.
Exactly.
And, there's this really touching reminder in the sources about the shortness of our journey together.
Like we're all just passing through.
They told this story about a man on a bus who realized that most of the things we get upset about aren't worth the energy.
It's about choosing your battles, letting go of the little things.
Especially when you consider the bigger picture.
And those challenges we face in our interactions with others, they're not just obstacles.
They're opportunities for growth.
They show us where we need to work on ourselves, where we need more patience, more understanding.
It's like they're highlighting those rough edges that need to be smoothed out.
And ultimately, it comes down to adjusting ourselves rather than trying to change others.
Because we can't control other people, right?
But we can control how we respond to them.
It's about taking responsibility for our own peace of mind, our own contribution to the atmosphere.
There's this great story that illustrates this point. It's about a gardener who's given the advice to learn to love the weeds.
Love the weeds.
Yeah, like instead of seeing them as a nuisance, try to appreciate them as part of the whole.
See the beauty in the imperfection.
Exactly. And, it's the same with people. We don't have to like everyone.
But we can love them.
See them as part of the family, part of the bigger picture.
And that love, that respect, it can grow over time.
Through consistent acts of kindness and understanding.
And all of these ideas point to this central understanding. Love and harmony are essential.
They're not just ideals, they're the foundation.
And the sources really emphasize this, urging us to forgive easily, to be open to different perspectives.
To let love be the guiding force in all our interactions.
And finally, they use this beautiful analogy of a puzzle where each person is an essential piece.
No matter how big or small their role may seem.
Everyone is needed to complete the picture.
And that picture, ultimately, is something much greater than any of us individually.
So, as you reflect on all of this, dear listener, ask yourself, what are the weeds in your own life that you can learn to love?
How can you apply these principles of understanding, acceptance, and love to create more harmony in your own interactions?
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We hope it's giving you some food for thought on your own journey of service and connection.
It's been a pleasure exploring these ideas with you.